I'm Bernard McBride, and I'm President and CEO of Behavioral Health System Baltimore, which is the city's authority for mental health and drug and alcohol issues. So we're the people that the Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, and her team look to for guidance around the issues that we're here to talk about today. And so, in the fall, the Mayor charged us, our team, with putting together a group of stakeholders to come up with a comprehensive recommendation for how to improve access to and quality of treatment for people who are struggling with substance use. So that was our task. So we launched a task force, and in the first phase, of course, it's a big topic, a lot of interest. We had a lot of people who wanted to be part of the task force. I had calls for people who've written articles, who've had family members, who've had some involvement. And so we decided to have a large kind of guiding task force. It's now up to about 40 people, but do the work of the task force in work groups. And so that's really what I'm here to talk to you about, which is really just a slice of Baltimore City's efforts to kind of mitigate against the terrible negative effects of drug use, especially heroin. So, just to give you a little couple of things about our kind of orientation. Baltimore is a city of 622,000 people. We are operating currently with the notion that there are about 19,000 people a year who use heroin. We're focusing on heroin because that's the hot topic. It is probably the most serious drug use focus in the city. It's not the only one. As you all know, alcohol is probably, by the numbers, a much more serious problem for most of us. But heroin has a certain challenge to it that I think warrants it being what I would say is the center of the target when we're trying to think of how to focus our energies. So in the last full year, 2013, for which we have information, there were about 250 deaths, overdose deaths in the city of Baltimore. 60% of those were heroin involved. And 85 of those, so 150 of the two, were heroin involved, and about 85 either also or instead had prescription opiate involved. So between the two, we're accounting for a large number of heroin and opiate-related deaths in our city. The numbers were going down slightly for a few years, and then there's been an uptick. So 2013 was a little bit up. We've seen preliminary numbers for 2014 also up. Heroin is becoming a little bit larger portion of the deaths. One thing I would say about Baltimore is we have a problem. Most of you see The Wire and other shows that kind of dramatize our problem. I'd say we have no bigger problem than most other cities. But there is no question that for whatever reason, historically, the attention to and preference for heroin has stayed more steady than in other places, and therefore been less moved by some of the other drug comings and goings. So heroin is really the center of our universe. As in other places, lots of our criminal justice related activities are drug related. 35% of arrests are drug related in the city of Baltimore. And most of those are sale related. And of the sale related, most of that has to do with either heroin or cocaine. Of the possession related charges, about half of those are heroin or cocaine related. They're hard to separate sometimes. And the rest is related to marijuana, which in our state we're hoping will go down, as last year passed the decriminalization statute for amounts less than 10 grand. So we're hoping that some of that energy will go into the pot to help us do a better job with some of the more serious things. So like other cities, Baltimore has a pretty robust history of various kinds of programs and interventions that have been pretty creative. We've put a lot of energy into expanding treatment over the last 10 years and have done pretty well at that, although what I'll come back to saying is it's not been as comprehensive as it ought to be. So the amount of people receiving medication-assisted treatment is very high in the city of Baltimore. Methadone is very common. We've done pretty well with buprenorphine, but not as well as we want to. We think that would be a better alternative for many of the people that need and benefit from that kind of service. We have a growing number of other kinds of recovery supports programs that are available and that we believe in. So we've been doing the right things. We have a pretty serious overdose prevention set of circumstances. We have a pretty robust needle exchange program that's been in place for a while. Naloxone is being rolled out. The EMTs all carry it. The police force is about ready to train up and start having police officers do it. So in a way, we're doing the right things in that regard. The police department has had some pretty innovative programs to kind of target crime-related heroin activities, and we've been part of that in that when they're neighborhood-based, we try to serve the purpose of being the department that helps identify and engage people who have need for services. But most of them have been pretty police-driven. And while they've been successful, there's always the question about what to do about the people who are identified through that process. And of course, we have specialty courts of some number, been around for a long time in Baltimore. So the judicial system, the judges have been involved in trying to create alternatives for people struggling with this thing. And we have a couple of more recent violence reduction efforts that are heavily involved with the whole heroin and drug trade world, and we're part of that. So what happens is when we're at the table as the behavioral health people, people turn to us and say, what is your contribution to this bigger effort? And what we're saying is that we really should have a system where people who are struggling with substance use can wake up in the morning and say, this is a day that I am going to deal with this issue and have unencumbered access to some kind of care. Or judges or police who are looking for alternatives to people that they're involved with have a way to make sure that people get access to service. And what we found ourselves in the position of saying is we can't guarantee that. Despite all of the services that we have available in the city, the odds of somebody getting access to service in a timely way are really not great. And it has to do with the fact that the way the system is organized, the way we pay for services, the way we license providers is disorganized and incomplete. And so the task force charge really is to come up with a set of recommendations that involve recommendations for us as the local authority, but also for our state partners who are part of the task force, to do a better job of monitoring the way in which people get into services, and when they get services, that the services that they get are the best that can be offered. We have some pretty huge, as an example, methadone clinics that meet all of the accreditation standards. But I guarantee you, if you stood outside dosing time and watch what goes on, you would say this cannot be what good treatment is all about. We have one clinic that has a caseload of about 2,500 people, many of whom show up in 1, 2, or 3 hour portion of time during the day, and it's really a service. Yeah. And those of us who are responsible for that know it is. So we're promising to be part of a process that gets to the point where we can help do away with the stigma and the prejudice that still exists, and that we have people who, because they're ill-informed, think badly of the people we're trying to serve, but also do our job to make sure that what they see in terms of treatment in the public eye meets a standard that we would be happy with in terms of saying that's good care, and that we can be sure that people that are getting that service are getting it because they need it and getting it only for as long as they need it, and making sure it's the right care. As we said, a number of kinds of services is growing, and I think it behooves us to not miss the opportunity to make sure that we do the most obvious thing, and that is people that suffer with addiction or substance use, however you want to call it, get access to help getting out from under it when the time comes that they're interested in doing it. So that's really what we're all about. And there are lots of elements to it, and we think that for our success, there comes success for everybody, because for every person that we successfully engage in our treatment system, that's a person that's not involved in the criminal justice system, it's not committing crimes, it's not out on the street, it's not buying, it's not contributing to the street economy, which is very hard to break. And that is a charge that I think we all share around the country. In our particular case, I think we are optimistic because the changes in the Affordable Care Act and the eligibility for insurance creates an opportunity for us to engage more people than we've been able to in the last, in the time before the Affordable Care Act under expanding the Medicaid access. So that's our goal. We're in the middle of it. We're optimistic. Got a lot of people involved, and this time next year, hopefully we'll be starting to implement some of the recommendations. So, thank you.